Imagine, for a moment, the quiet of a late night from your childhood, when the world outside your window seemed to hold its breath. The house is still, save for the faint creak of settling walls, and you lie awake, staring at the shadowed ceiling above. There's a strange weight in your chest, a feeling you can't yet name, as the vastness of everything, of life, of the endless sky beyond, presses down on you. Why are you here? Is there a reason at all? These questions, unspoken, but heavy, flicker like distant stars in the dark of your mind, too far to grasp, too immense to ignore. It's a moment that lingers, a whisper of uncertainty that marks the first time you truly feel the weight of existence. This is not a collapse, nor a moment of despair, but something quieter, more profound, a crack in the foundation of everything you thought you knew. It's as if the world, once so solid and certain, reveals itself as a fragile illusion, a story you've been told but never questioned. As a child, or perhaps later in the restless years of adolescence, this awakening often comes unbidden, slipping into the stillness of sleepless nights. You might recall the sound of your own heartbeat, louder than it should be, as you wonder if anyone else feels this same vast emptiness, this same longing for a meaning that seems just out of reach. It's not fear, not yet, but a kind of awe, a recognition that the life you've been living is only a small part of something incomprehensibly larger. This whisper of uncertainty is what we call an existential crisis, though the term feels too harsh, too clinical for such a tender, haunting moment. It's not a breakdown, but a quiet opening, a door creaking ajar to reveal a landscape of questions you didn't know existed. Why do we exist at all? Is there a purpose woven into the fabric of being, or are we simply adrift in an indifferent void? These are not questions that demand immediate answers, but ones that linger, shaping the way we see ourselves and the world. They are the first stirrings of a deeper consciousness, a realization that life is not just a series of events, but a mystery to be pondered. Take a moment to reflect on this. Can you recall the first time you felt this weight, this quiet unease? Perhaps it was a night much like the one I described, or perhaps it came in a fleeting thought during a mundane day, a sudden awareness of your own smallness against the enormity of it all. What did it feel like to stand at the edge of that, unknowing, to sense that the ground beneath your feet was not as solid as you once believed? This moment, though often unsettling, is also a kind of gift. It strips away the comforting assumptions we carry, the stories we tell ourselves about who we are and why we matter. It leaves us raw, vulnerable, but also awake, truly awake perhaps, for the first time. It's a whisper that doesn't shout or demand, but simply asks, what if there is no inherent meaning? What if the vastness of existence holds no answers, only echoes of our own wondering? And in that question, there is a strange beauty, a call to look deeper, to listen closer, to feel the pulse of a life that is both fleeting and infinite. As you lie there, in the memory of that night, or in the quiet of this very moment, consider how this whisper of uncertainty has shaped you. It is not a flaw or a failing, but a mark of being human, a reminder that to live is to question, to feel the weight of the unknown, and to carry on despite it. This awakening, though it may feel like a burden, is also an invitation to explore, to wonder, to seek, not for final answers, but for the courage to keep asking. And in that seeking, there is a kind of quiet strength, a resilience born from standing face to face with the vastness and choosing, still, to live. Imagine, for a moment, a world suspended in the haze of time, where the air itself hums with questions older than the stones beneath your feet. Picture a bustling marketplace in ancient Athens, the agora, where the sun beats down on dusty sandals and the clamor of voices rises like a restless tide. Here, amid the scent of olives and the sharp tang of debate, a man named Socrates wanders, his eyes alight with a quiet, piercing curiosity. Or perhaps shift your gaze to a distant Himalayan valley, where the silence is so profound it seems to whisper secrets to the wind, and a sage sits cross-legged on the cold earth, pondering the riddle of the self. What is it to be? What lies beneath the surface of our fleeting thoughts? These are not the musings of a restless modern mind, but echoes of doubt that have reverberated through the ages, as timeless as the human heart. Long before our era of endless distraction, before the weight of technology and the rush of progress, there were those who stood at the edge of understanding and peered into the void. In Athens, Socrates did not offer answers, but questions, sharp, unrelenting, like a blade cutting through the fog of assumption. He asked his fellow citizens to define virtue, to explain justice, to uncover the essence of the good life. And, in doing so, he revealed a truth as unsettling now as it was then, that to truly live is to confront the unknown, to admit that what we think we know may be nothing more than a shadow on the wall of a cave. His doubts were not a burden, but a lantern, illuminating the vastness of what lies beyond certainty. Far to the east, in the serene isolation of mountain retreats, early Buddhist and Taoist thinkers grappled with their own mysteries. They sat in stillness, their breath mingling with the mist, and asked if the self even exists at all. Is the I that feels, that fears, that longs for meaning merely an illusion, a ripple on the surface of an endless ocean? Their teachings suggest that to seek meaning might be to chase a phantom, that perhaps peace lies not in finding answers, but in dissolving the need for them. Yet, even in this surrender, there is a kind of doubt, a quiet unease that whispers in the spaces between thoughts. If there is no self, then what is this ache, this longing that stirs within? Take a moment to reflect on this. How often do we, in our own lives, brush against these ancient uncertainties without even realizing it? A fleeting moment of doubt in the middle of a busy day, a sudden question that rises unbidden as we stare into the night. Could it be that we are walking the same paths as those who came before us, treading on ground worn smooth by millennia of restless minds? These ancient echoes of doubt are not relics of a bygone era, confined to dusty scrolls or crumbling temples. They are woven into the very fabric of what it means to be human. To question existence, to feel the ground shift beneath our certainties, is not a modern affliction born of too much leisure or too little faith. It is a companion as old as consciousness itself, a shadow that walks beside us through every age. Whether in the crowded agora, where philosophers clashed like thunder, or in the silent valleys, where wisdom was sought in the absence of words, humanity has always been haunted by the same enigma. Why are we here? And does that question even have an answer? Consider the courage it took for those early thinkers to voice their uncertainties, to stand before their peers or alone in the wilderness and admit that the world might not be as it seems. Their doubts were not a sign of weakness, but of a profound strength, a willingness to unravel the comforting stories they had been told, to strip away the illusions of permanence and control. And in doing so, they gifted us a legacy, a reminder that to live fully is to live with questions, to embrace the mystery rather than flee from it. Their voices still linger, carried on the wind through centuries, asking us to pause, to wonder, to doubt as they did. As you let these thoughts settle, imagine yourself standing in that ancient agora, the heat of the sun on your skin, the murmur of debate in your ears, or perhaps in that Himalayan valley, the silence so deep it feels like a presence. What would you ask if you could speak to those early seekers of truth? What doubts would rise within you, unbidden, as you stood on the threshold of the unknown? Let the weight of their questions linger, not as a burden, but as an invitation, a quiet call to look deeper, to listen to the ancient echoes that still whisper in the corners of your mind. Imagine a city at the peak of its morning rush, a sprawling maze of glass and steel, where every soul seems to move with unwavering purpose. The streets hum with the rhythm of hurried footsteps, the air thick with the unspoken agreement that everyone knows exactly where they're going, why they're going there, and what it all means. But beneath this polished surface, hidden in the fleeting glances of strangers, there's a quiet tremor, a question that dares not speak its name. What if all of this, the roles we play, the structures we cling to, are nothing more than illusions, fragile shields against a deeper, darker uncertainty? Consider for a moment the intricate frameworks we've built to anchor ourselves. From the ancient cathedrals that promise divine order to the gleaming laboratories that map the cosmos, society has always offered us answers, or at least the comforting illusion of them. Religion whispers of a higher plan, a purpose woven into the fabric of creation. Culture hands us traditions, roles, and identities, telling us who we are before we can even ask the question. Science, with its cold precision, carves the world into equations and theories, as if understanding the mechanics of existence might somehow reveal its meaning. These are the scaffolding of certainty, the walls we erect to keep the void at bay. And for a time, they hold. We walk through life as if on solid ground, trusting in the stories we've been told, in the systems that promise stability. But what happens when you pause, when the noise of the city fades, and you look too closely at these structures? Picture yourself standing on a busy street corner, the crowd flowing around you like a river, and yet you're utterly still. You notice the cracks in the edifice, how the grand narratives of faith can falter under the weight of doubt, how cultural norms shift like sand with each passing generation, how even science, for all its brilliance, stumbles when asked not how, but why. In that moment, the illusion of certainty begins to unravel. The roles you've played, student, worker, parent, citizen, suddenly feel like costumes, borrowed and ill-fitting. The routines that once gave shape to your days now seem like arbitrary rituals, empty of inherent truth. And beneath it all, there's a vast, silent emptiness, a void that no framework can fill. Take a moment to reflect on this. Have you ever felt that tremor, that quiet suspicion that the certainties you've relied upon might be nothing more than comforting fictions? Perhaps it came in a fleeting thought during a mundane task, or maybe it struck you in a moment of profound solitude. What did it feel like to stand at the edge of that realization, to sense the ground beneath your beliefs begin to crumble? This unraveling is not a failure, nor is it a descent into chaos. It is, in its own strange way, an invitation. When the illusion of certainty falls away, we are left naked before the void, stripped of our borrowed answers. But in that vulnerability, there is also a kind of clarity. We begin to see that these frameworks were never truths etched in stone, but human creations, tools we crafted to navigate a universe that offers no guarantees. They are shelters, yes, but shelters built on shifting ground. And as they tremble, we are forced to confront a deeper question. If the answers we've been given are not absolute, then what is left? Is there anything solid to stand on? Or are we doomed to wander in a landscape of endless uncertainty? Picture again that city. Now at dusk, the golden light casting long shadows across the pavement. The crowd has thinned, and the air feels heavier, as if carrying the weight of unspoken thoughts. A woman sits on a park bench, her briefcase forgotten at her side, staring into the distance. A young man leans against a lamppost, earbuds in, but no music playing, lost in a reverie he cannot name. In their silence, they are wrestling with the same ancient riddle. If the structures of certainty are illusions, then where does meaning come from? Does it exist at all, or is it something we must forge for ourselves out of the raw, unformed chaos of existence? This is the quiet crisis that lurks beneath the surface of our ordered lives. It is not loud or dramatic, not a storm that upends everything in an instant. It is a whisper, a shadow that falls across the mind in moments of stillness. And yet, it has the power to change everything. For when we see through the illusion of certainty, we are no longer content to live on borrowed truths. We begin to ask our own questions, to seek our own paths, even if those paths lead us into the unknown. And in that seeking, there is a kind of courage, a willingness to face the void, not with answers, but with an open, searching heart. Take a moment to reflect on this. What illusions of certainty have you clung to in your own life? And what might you discover if you let them go? If you allowed yourself to stand, just for a moment, in the vast, uncharted space of uncertainty? Let that thought linger as the city fades into night, its lights flickering like small, defiant stars against the endless dark. Imagine for a moment that you're walking alone on a quiet evening, the sky heavy with the promise of rain. Each step feels familiar, as if you've walked this path 1,000 times before. Yet something is different. The world around you, those houses lining the street, the faint hum of a distant car, even the rhythm of your own breath, feels strangely unreal, as though you've stepped into a dream that isn't quite yours. A low rumble of thunder rolls in from somewhere far off, and it seems to echo not just in the air, but deep within you, a tremor of unease that you can't quite name. This is the moment of fracture, the instant when everything you thought you knew slips out of reach, leaving you suspended in a quiet, unsettling void. It begins subtly, almost imperceptibly, like a crack in a window pane that you only notice when the light hits it just right. Perhaps it's the way the rain starts to fall, each drop tapping against the ground with a rhythm that feels too deliberate, as if it's trying to tell you something you've forgotten. Or maybe it's the way your own reflection catches your eye in a passing window, and for a fleeting second, you don't recognize the face staring back. Who is that person? Why are they here, walking through this damp, grey evening, as if they have somewhere to be, some purpose to fulfill? The questions creep in uninvited, and with them, a sensation of losing your footing. Not physically, but in some deeper, more essential way. It's as if the earth itself has shifted beneath you, just enough to remind you that nothing is as solid as it seems. This is what it feels like when the familiar becomes alien, when the scaffolding of your everyday life, those routines, those certainties, starts to wobble under the weight of your own awareness. You might try to shake it off, to focus on the sound of your footsteps or the coolness of the rain against your skin, but the feeling lingers. It's a quiet disorientation, not loud or dramatic, but profound in its stillness. You begin to wonder if the world has always been this strange, this unknowable, and you've only just now noticed, or perhaps it's you who has changed. Your eyes suddenly open to a truth you weren't ready to see, that beneath the surface of everything you've built, your identity, your relationships, your sense of purpose, there lies a vast, uncharted emptiness waiting patiently for you to peer into it. Take a moment to reflect on this. Have you ever felt that subtle shift, that quiet fracture in your sense of reality? Maybe it wasn't on a rainy evening, but in some other fleeting moment, sitting alone in a quiet room or watching the world rush by from a train window, when the weight of your own existence pressed against you, demanding to be felt. What did it stir in you? Was it fear, curiosity, or something softer, something harder to name? As you walk on, the rain grows heavier, each drop a tiny mirror reflecting fragments of a world you thought you understood. But now, every familiar shape, the curve of a street lamp, the silhouette of a tree, seems to carry a question mark. Why does any of this exist? Why do you? These aren't the idle musings of a tired mind. They are raw, insistent, cutting through the noise of daily life like a blade through silk. And yet, there are no answers waiting for you at the end of this street. No comforting truths to wrap around yourself like a warm coat. There is only the sound of the rain, the echo of thunder, and the growing realization that you are adrift, in a sea of uncertainty with no map to guide you. This moment of fracture isn't just a passing mood, it's a threshold, It marks the point where you can no longer ignore the vastness of what you don't know, the fragility of what you've taken for granted. It's as if you've been living in a house built on sand, and now, with the first gust of wind, the walls begin to tremble. But there's a strange beauty in this unraveling, isn't there? A kind of quiet liberation in letting go of the illusion of control, in standing bare before the mystery of it all. The rain keeps falling. The thunder murmurs in the distance, and you walk on, not because you know where you're going, but because stopping feels impossible. Somewhere deep within, a voice whispers that this discomfort, this alienation, might just be the first step towards something truer, something yet unseen. Imagine for a moment that you're standing on the edge of a towering cliff, the wind howling around you, tugging at your clothes as if urging you to leap into the unknown. Below, the ocean churns restlessly, a vast expanse of dark, untamed mystery. And above, the sky stretches endlessly, indifferent to your presence. In this fleeting instant, a realization washes over you like a cold wave. No one, not a single soul, not even the universe itself, will hand you a purpose. There is no script written in the stars, no cosmic decree to guide your steps. You are free, utterly, terrifyingly free, to decide who you are and what your life will mean. This is the abyss of freedom, a concept that the philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre wrestled with, a truth that both liberates and burdens us in equal measure. Consider what this freedom truly entails. It is not the gentle liberty of choosing between trivialities, whether to wear blue or black, to take the scenic route or the shortcut. No, this is a radical freedom, a profound and unshakable responsibility to craft meaning from the raw, unformed clay of existence. Sartre believed that we are condemned to be free, a phrase that carries a haunting weight. There is no escape from this condition. Even to refuse to choose is itself a choice, a silent acceptance of the void. Picture yourself still on that cliff, the wind now a chorus of whispers, each one asking, what will you do? Who will you become? There is no safety net of divine will or predetermined fate to catch you. Every step forward, every decision is yours to bear. This freedom is exhilarating, isn't it? It's the rush of possibility, the sense that you could be anything. A poet, a wanderer, a builder of worlds. You could carve a path through life that no one else has ever walked, leaving footprints in places unseen. But with that exhilaration comes a shadow, a creeping dread that seeps into the marrow of your bones. What if you choose wrong? What if the meaning you create crumbles under the weight of time or doubt? What if, in the end, it all amounts to nothing? This duality is the double-edged sword of existence, cutting both ways, offering boundless potential while threatening endless uncertainty. Take a moment to reflect on this. Have you ever felt the weight of a choice, not just in its outcome, but in its very essence, as if it defined the core of who you are? Let's linger on this cliff a little longer, feeling the salty mist on our skin, hearing the distant crash of waves against stone. Sartre argued that because there is no inherent meaning woven into the fabric of the universe, we must become the weavers ourselves. We stitch together our purpose through actions, through relationships, through the quiet, often messy process of living. But this act of creation is not a one-time event. It is a lifelong labor, a constant negotiation with the void. Imagine looking down at your hands, seeing them not just as flesh and bone, but as tools of invention, capable of shaping a life from nothingness. Yet, how heavy they feel in this moment, trembling under the pressure of infinite possibility. This abyss of freedom is not a place of comfort. It is a wild, untamed frontier where every certainty dissolves like mist in the morning sun. There are no signposts here, no maps to guide you. You might yearn for someone to tell you what to do, for a voice to whisper the answers in the dark. But the silence is deafening, isn't it? It forces you to listen to your own thoughts, to confront the raw, unfiltered truth of your autonomy. Perhaps this is why freedom feels like an abyss, because to stand at its edge is to peer into the depths of yourself, to see not just what you are, but what you must become through sheer will. And so, as the wind continues to howl around you, carrying with it the scent of the unknown, ask yourself, what will you create in this boundless space? Will you step back from the edge, seeking the comfort of illusions and borrowed meanings? Or will you leap, not into the ocean below, but into the act of becoming, into a life that is yours alone, shaped by your hands, your heart, your choices? This freedom is both a gift and a curse, a paradox that defines the human condition. It is the cliff on which we all stand, sooner or later, gazing into the vastness, wondering if we have the courage to define our own horizon. Take a moment to reflect on this. What does freedom mean to you, not in theory, but in the quiet, unguarded corners of your soul? Imagine, for a moment, a grand cathedral standing alone under a grey, overcast sky. Its towering spires pierce the heavens, once a beacon of unshakable truth, a sanctuary where every question found its answer in the divine. But now, as you step inside, the air is heavy with silence. The pews are empty, the stained glass casts muted shadows, and the echoes of ancient prayers have faded into nothingness. This is not just a building, it is a symbol of a profound shift, a moment in time when the old absolutes, the certainties that once held our world together, dissolved into the ether. What happens when the foundation of meaning crumbles? What do we find in the hollow space left behind? This emptiness, this void, is what a thinker named Nietzsche spoke of when he declared the death of God. Not a literal passing, but a cultural unraveling. A quiet earthquake that shook the pillars of belief in a world once tethered to divine purpose. Picture the late 19th century, a time of rapid change where science began to outpace scripture and industrial smoke clouded the skies once thought to house angels. In this new landscape, humanity stood at a precipice, staring into a chasm where once there had been a guiding light. The cathedral of old meaning became a museum of echoes, a place where we could no longer turn for answers, but were forced to confront the silence instead. What does it mean to live in a world stripped of given truths? How do we navigate a reality where the compass of morality, purpose, and destiny no longer points to a fixed north? This confrontation with nothingness is not merely a loss, it is a weight. It presses down on the soul like the damp air of an autumn evening, heavy with the scent of decay and change. Without the old absolutes, we are left to face the vast expanse of our own freedom, a freedom so immense it can feel like a burden. Imagine standing in that empty cathedral, the cold stone beneath your feet, and realizing that the answers you seek will not come from above or beyond. They must be forged from within, carved out of the raw material of your own thoughts, doubts, and desires. But what if there is no material to carve? What if, in the end, there is only nothingness, a blank slate that refuses to be written upon? Take a moment to reflect on this. How does it feel to stand in the shadow of a world without inherent meaning? Does the silence of that cathedral frighten you? Or does it whisper of possibility, of a canvas yet to be painted by your own hand? This encounter with nothingness forces us to ask the hardest questions. If there is no preordained purpose, no cosmic script to follow, then what are we to make of our fleeting existence? Nietzsche warned that gazing into this abyss could consume us, that the void might stare back and unravel our very sense of self. Yet, he also hinted at a strange, almost defiant hope, that from this nothingness we might create something new, not a borrowed meaning, not a dogma handed down through generations, but a purpose born of our own struggle, our own will to affirm life in the face of indifference. Picture yourself now, not just in the cathedral, but beyond its walls, walking through a desolate field under that same grey sky. The wind carries no answers, only the rustle of dead leaves. And yet, in this barrenness, there is a subtle invitation, to plant a seed of your own making, to cultivate a meaning that belongs to no one but you. This weight of nothingness is not a sentence, but a challenge. It strips away the illusions of certainty, leaving us raw and exposed, yet also strangely alive. In the silence of that cathedral, in the emptiness of a world without absolutes, there is a quiet call to become the architect of your own existence, to build not from stone or scripture, but from the fragile, fleeting stuff of your own being. What will you create in this void? What meaning will you dare to forge when all the old truths have turned to dust? Let that question linger as you rest in this moment, carried by the gentle tide of thought into the deeper waters of your own mind. Imagine, for a moment, a man standing alone on a deserted beach, the grey expanse of the ocean stretching endlessly before him. The waves crash rhythmically, indifferent to his presence, their ceaseless motion a silent testament to a universe that neither cares nor judges. And yet, amidst this vast emptiness, a strange sound emerges, a low, unrestrained laughter, rising from the man's chest as if pulled from some hidden well of defiance. It's not a laugh of joy, nor one of despair, but something else entirely, a peculiar acknowledgement of life's absurdity. What is it about this collision between our yearning for meaning and the world's cold silence that can provoke such a response? Could it be that in recognizing the absurd, we uncover a strange, untamed form of purpose? This is the heart of what Albert Camus, a thinker who wrestled with the shadows of existence, called the absurd. It's not merely the absence of meaning, but the tension born from our relentless desire for it, clashing against a reality that offers no clear answers. Picture yourself walking through life as if on a tightrope, balancing a deep hunger for significance while gazing down into an abyss of indifference. We seek patterns, reasons, a grand narrative to explain why we wake each morning, why we love, why we suffer. Yet the universe gazes back with unblinking stars, its silence a canvas on which we paint our questions. Camus saw this not as a dead end, but as a dance, an absurd dance where the steps are ours to invent. Consider the man on the beach once more. His laughter isn't surrender, it's rebellion. He laughs because he sees the mismatch between his longing and the world's apathy. And instead of collapsing under the weight of it, he chooses to stand taller. Camus argued that to live with the absurd is to embrace this conflict without escaping into false certainties or despair. It's to live fully aware that life may lack inherent purpose, and yet to pour passion into each fleeting moment. Imagine crafting a sandcastle on that same beach, knowing the tide will wash it away by morning. Do you stop building, or do you shape each turret with care, finding meaning in the act itself, in the defiance of impermanence? Take a moment to reflect on this. Have you ever felt this tension in your own life? A moment when the world seemed to slip out of focus, when the rules and reasons you clung to suddenly felt hollow. Perhaps it was a quiet night, staring out at a city skyline, wondering if all the hustle below amounted to anything at all. Or maybe it was in the midst of a mundane task, folding, laundry or driving home, when a wave of doubt crept in. What am I even doing this for? The absurd doesn't always strike with dramatic force. Often, it whispers, lingering at the edges of our thoughts, asking us to confront the possibility that there is no ultimate why. Camus offered 3 paths in the face of this realization. The first is escape, leaping into faith or illusion, clinging to a belief system that papers over the void. The second is despair, allowing the weight of meaninglessness to crush the spirit, to rob life of color. But the third, the one he championed, is revolt, a refusal to bow to the absurd, not by denying it, but by living in spite of it. It's the man on the beach laughing, not because he has found an answer, but because he has chosen to keep asking the question, to keep dancing with the unknown. Think of it as planting a tree in a barren field, not because you expect it to change the landscape, but because the act of planting, of nurturing, becomes its own quiet rebellion. This rebellion isn't loud or aggressive. It's a gentle, persistent flame. It's the artist who paints despite knowing their work may never be seen, the teacher who imparts wisdom to a world that may forget, the parent who loves knowing that time will eventually part them from their child. In each of these acts, there is an acknowledgement of the absurd, a nod to the universe's indifference, and yet a choice to create meaning where none is guaranteed. Isn't there something profoundly human in this? To stare into the face of nothingness and say, I will build anyway, I will love anyway, I will live anyway. Pause here for a breath. Let this sink in. Consider a moment in your own journey where you felt the absurd brush against you, where the lack of answers didn't paralyze you, but spurred you to act, to create, to connect. Perhaps it was in the smallest of gestures, writing a letter, tending a garden, or simply sitting in silence with someone you care for. In those moments, did you feel the weight of the universe's silence? And did you, even briefly, choose to dance with it? Camus believed that this dance, this revolt, is where we find our truest selves. Not in the answers we might never grasp, but in the questions we dare to ask, in the life we dare to live, despite them. The man on the beach, his laughter fading into the wind, doesn't walk away defeated. He turns back to the ocean, picks up a stone, and skips it across the water, watching the ripples spread and vanish. Each throw is a gesture, a fleeting mark on an indifferent world. And yet, in that fleetingness, there is something eternal, a quiet, absurd defiance that says, I am here and for now, that is enough. Imagine for a moment a quiet graveyard at dusk, the golden light of the fading sun casting long shadows over weathered tombstones. The air is heavy, thick with the scent of earth and the whisper of inevitability. Each stone stands as a silent sentinel, marking a life once lived, now gone. A name, a date, a story reduced to a few etched words. As you walk slowly among them, the crunch of gravel beneath your feet feels like a countdown, a reminder that one day, your own name might rest here, swallowed by time. It's in moments like these that the veil of daily distraction lifts and we are confronted with the stark truth of our mortality. Why does the thought of our own ending stir such a deep, restless ache within us? What is it about the finality of death that sharpens the question of whether our fleeting lives can hold any lasting weight? Death is not merely an event, a distant horizon we might one day cross. It is a mirror, reflecting back to us the fragility of every breath, every choice, every unspoken dream. We spend so much of our lives running from this reflection, filling our days with noise and purpose to drown out the quiet dread that lingers at the edges of our thoughts. But here, in the stillness of a graveyard, there is no escaping it. The inevitability of our end strips away the illusions we cling to, the belief that we have endless time, that our small victories or failures will echo through eternity. Instead, we are left with a raw, piercing clarity. Our time is finite, a mere flicker against the vast expanse of the universe. And with this clarity comes the question that haunts so many of us. Does anything we do truly matter when the end is already written? Think of the countless lives that have come before, each one a universe of hopes and fears, now reduced to dust beneath our feet. In ancient times, the Egyptians built towering pyramids to defy death, to immortalize their pharaohs as gods. Yet, even those mighty structures crumble under the weight of millennia, their once sacred chambers now hollow, visited by curious tourists rather than trembling worshippers. In medieval villages, death was a constant companion. Plagues and wars, reaping souls with merciless indifference, yet people still sang, prayed, and loved as if to spite the reaper at their door. Across cultures and eras, humanity has wrestled with mortality, crafting stories of afterlife or legacy to soften the blow. But no matter the tale we tell, the truth remains. Death does not bargain, does not pause to consider our unfinished business. So, we must ask ourselves, if the end is certain, where do we find the courage to keep building, to keep loving, to keep searching for meaning in a life that will one day slip through our fingers? Take a moment to reflect on this, Imagine your own life as a single candle flame, burning brightly for a brief span before the wind inevitably snuffs it out. What do you feel in that image? Is it fear, a desperate urge to make the flame burn brighter, hotter, before it's gone? Or is there a strange peace in accepting that the light, however brief, is yours to shape while it lasts? Perhaps the weight of mortality is not a burden, but a lens, a way to see our lives with a clarity we might otherwise miss. When we stand face to face with our own impermanence, the trivialities that consume us begin to fade. The petty arguments, the endless striving for more, the fear of failure, they lose their grip when measured against the finality of an ending. What remains are the questions that truly matter. Have I lived in a way that feels true to who I am? Have I touched even one life in a way that lingers beyond my own? These are not questions with easy answers, nor are they meant to be. They are invitations to look deeper, to peel back the layers of distraction and confront the raw essence of what it means to be alive, knowing that one day we will no longer be. There is a quiet mystery in this confrontation with death, a paradox that both unravels and rebuilds us. On one hand, the certainty of our end can feel like a void, a great nothingness that renders our struggles absurd. Why labor over a painting, a relationship, a dream, when all of it will one day be forgotten? And yet, on the other hand, it is precisely because of this finitude that every moment gains a kind of desperate beauty. A sunrise is not just a sunrise when you know you will only see a limited number of them. A laugh shared with someone you love is not just a laugh, it becomes a fleeting treasure, a defiance against the ticking clock. Mortality forces us to ask not just if our lives have meaning, but how we might create it, moment by moment, in the shadow of an inevitable end. As the last light of day slips below the horizon, casting the graveyard into deepening shadow, consider this. Perhaps the question of meaning is not about defying death or outlasting it. Perhaps it is about embracing the temporary nature of our existence, letting it teach us to live with intention, with wonder, with a kind of reckless authenticity. If we knew for certain that tomorrow would be our last, how would we spend today? What words would we finally say? What burdens would we finally release? These questions linger in the air, as heavy as the silence around us, yet as gentle as the fading light. They do not demand answers, but they do ask us to listen, to the beating of our own heart, to the impermanence of all things, and to the quiet call to live while we still can. Imagine for a moment the first light of dawn creeping through the tangled branches of an ancient forest. The air is crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth and unseen blooms, and with each step you take along a narrow, winding path, there's a quiet awareness that time itself is slipping through your fingers. The soft crunch of leaves beneath your feet becomes a rhythm, a subtle reminder of your own fleeting presence in this vast, indifferent world. What does it mean to truly live, to be authentic, when every moment edges you closer to an inevitable end? This is not a question of despair, but a call, a whisper from within to face the reality of our mortality, and in doing so, uncover a deeper way of being. In the quiet of this forest, as the golden light begins to pierce the canopy, we might find echoes of a profound idea, one explored by a thinker named Martin Heidegger, who spoke of being towards death. It is not a morbid fixation, but a recognition that our finitude shapes the very essence of who we are. To live authentically, he suggested, is to embrace this truth, not to shy away from the shadow of death, but to let it illuminate the choices we make, the paths we tread, the moments we cherish. Picture yourself pausing on this forest trail, a cool breeze brushing against your skin, and feeling the weight of time not as a burden, but as a guide. Each heartbeat, each breath, becomes a quiet act of defiance against oblivion, a decision to exist fully in the now. But what does authenticity mean in a world so often draped in pretense and distraction? Is it a liberation, a shedding of the masks we wear to fit into the expectations of others? Or is it a heavier load, a solitary journey where we must confront the raw, unfiltered truth of our own existence. As you stand there, surrounded by the whispering trees, consider how often we live as if tomorrow is guaranteed, as if our days are endless. Yet, in the stillness of dawn, the illusion fades. The forest does not care for your plans or your fears, it simply is. And in its indifference, there is a strange kind of freedom, a chance to define yourself not by external measures, but by the quiet convictions that stir within. Take a moment to reflect on this. When was the last time you felt truly present, stripped of all pretense, standing bare before the reality of your own impermanence? Perhaps it was in a fleeting instant of clarity, or perhaps it is here, now, in the imagined rustle of leaves and the soft glow of morning. Heidegger's challenge is not to solve the riddle of death, but to let it reshape how we live. To be authentic is to walk this path with open eyes, knowing that every step is both a beginning and an end, a delicate balance between the urge to create meaning and the acceptance of its transience. And so, as the forest around you hums with unseen life, there's a quiet invitation to consider your own journey. Are you running from the shadow that trails behind? Or are you turning to face it, letting it teach you what it means to be? Authenticity, in this light, is not a destination, but a practice, a way of moving through the world with intention, even when the path ahead is shrouded in mist. The dawn continues to break, painting the world in hues of gold and amber, and with it comes a gentle nudge to live not in spite of your mortality, but because of it. For in this fleeting dance between being and non-being, there lies a profound kind of beauty, waiting to be claimed by those brave enough to see. Imagine yourself standing beneath an endless canopy of night, the sky unfurling above you like a vast, ancient scroll written in a language you cannot decipher. Each star, a tiny puncture of light, seems to whisper secrets of a universe so immense that your own existence feels like a fleeting breath in the wind. Have you ever felt this? A moment when the sheer scale of everything strips away the illusions of your significance, leaving you both humbled and strangely alive. Tonight, let us linger in this cosmic perspective, gazing into the infinite, where our struggles and questions seem to dissolve into the great expanse, yet somehow sharpen with a quiet, piercing clarity. Picture yourself on a hilltop, far from the hum of cities and the distractions of daily life. The air is cool, carrying the faint scent of earth and grass, and above you, the heavens stretch without end. The stars are not mere dots of light. They are ancient fires, burning for billions of years, their glow reaching you across distances, so vast that the mind stumbles to grasp them. Some of these lights come from suns that no longer exist, their final echoes traveling through the void to meet your eyes. In this moment, you are a witness to time itself, a fleeting observer in a story that began long before you and will continue long after. Does this make you feel small, or does it stir something deeper? A sense of wonder at being part of such an unfathomable tale. As you stand there, consider the earth beneath your feet, a speck of dust adrift in the cosmic ocean. Our planet, with all its mountains and oceans, its wars and dreams, is but a pale blue dot when seen from the edge of our solar system. A term coined by Carl Sagan to remind us of our fragility and unity. From that distant vantage, every triumph and tragedy of human history becomes invisible, swallowed by the enormity of space. And yet, here you are, a tiny fragment of consciousness, capable of looking out and asking, what does it all mean? Isn't it both humbling and extraordinary that among the countless worlds and silent voids, you possess the rare gift of awareness, the ability to ponder your place in this boundless mystery? Take a moment to reflect on this. Let the weight of the universe press gently against your thoughts. Feel the paradox of your insignificance and your uniqueness, intertwined like the light and shadow of a distant galaxy. Now, let your mind wander further, beyond our galaxy to the billions of others, each a swirling dance of stars and planets, perhaps harboring their own forms of life their own silent questions. The universe, expanding ever outwards since its fiery birth, offers no answers, only the quiet hum of its own existence. In the face of such vastness, our existential struggles, the search for purpose, the fear of oblivion, can seem almost trivial, like a whisper lost in a storm. And yet, this very perspective can lift us above our daily burdens. If nothing truly matters on a cosmic scale, then perhaps we are free to create our own meaning, to paint our own fleeting strokes on the canvas of infinity. Could it be that our smallness is not a diminishment, but an invitation to cherish the brief, fragile beauty of our lives? Consider the astronomers of old, those who first dared to map the heavens, standing on desert plains or mountaintops, their crude instruments pointed at the same sky you see now. They too must have felt this duality, the awe of the infinite and the loneliness of their own fleeting existence. From Copernicus to Galileo, they shifted our understanding, dethroning Earth from the center of creation, forcing humanity to confront its peripheral place in the grand design. With each discovery, the universe grew larger and we, smaller. Yet, did this diminish their curiosity, their drive to know more? Or did it fuel a deeper hunger, a need to find significance not in our position, but in our capacity to wonder? As you gaze upward, let the starlight wash over you, a reminder that you are both nothing and everything, a mote of dust with the power to dream of the cosmos. The universe does not care for your worries or your triumphs, it simply is. And in its indifference, there lies a strange liberation. If the vastness owes you no purpose, then perhaps you owe it nothing in return. Perhaps the meaning of your life is not written in the stars, but in the quiet choices you make beneath them, in the connections you forge, the questions you dare to ask. Take a moment to reflect on this. Let the night sky hold you in its silent embrace. Feel the weight of your own existence, so small yet so precious, against the backdrop of eternity. And so, as the stars continue their ancient journey across the void, let us linger here a little longer, not in fear of our smallness, but in reverence for the mystery that surrounds us. We are but a flicker in the cosmic night, yet in that flicker lies the power to witness, to feel, to imagine. Perhaps that is enough, to stand beneath the infinite, to ask our questions, and to let the answers drift like stardust, unclaimed and unknowable, into the endless dark. Imagine for a moment that you're standing at a crossroads, not just a literal intersection of paths, but a deeper, more profound junction in the landscape of your own life. The air around you feels heavy, charged with a quiet intensity, as if the world itself is holding its breath, waiting for you to choose. Each direction stretches out endlessly, shrouded in a soft mist of uncertainty, and every path seems to whisper a different promise, or a different peril. You can feel the weight of this moment pressing down on you, not as a burden of physical strain, but as something far more intangible, the burden of choice. In times like these, when the fabric of meaning feels threadbare, every decision seems to carry the weight of eternity. How do we move forward when the act of choosing feels like a gamble on the very essence of who we are? This is the silent struggle that often emerges in the heart of an existential crisis. It's not just about deciding between one job or another, one city or another, but about the deeper realization that each choice we make is a step toward defining or redefining our purpose. Picture yourself there again, at that crossroads, your feet rooted to the earth as the wind tugs gently at your clothes. To the left, a path winds through a forest, dark and mysterious, hinting at challenges that might strip away your illusions, but reveal raw, unfiltered truths. To the right, a sunlit meadow beckons, offering comfort and ease, yet perhaps at the cost of never confronting the deeper questions that gnaw at your soul. And straight ahead, a jagged cliff looms, daring you to leap into the unknown, to trust that something meaningful lies beyond the fall. Which do you choose? Or do you stand still, frozen by the sheer magnitude of possibility? This paralysis, this inability to act, often grips us when we're most aware of life's lack of inherent direction. We overthink, turning each option over in our minds like a stone, examining every facet for a hidden answer. What if this choice leads to regret? What if that one strips away the fragile sense of self we've built? The mind becomes a labyrinth of what-ifs, each thought a winding corridor leading to yet another dead end. And yet, beneath this mental churn, there's a quiet truth waiting to be acknowledged. No choice is final, and no path is without its own form of meaning. Even in our hesitation, we are shaping ourselves, carving out a space where doubt and decision coexist. Take a moment to reflect on this. Have you ever stood at your own crossroads, metaphorical or real, feeling the weight of a decision press against you? Perhaps it was a choice about who to become, or a moment when you questioned whether any choice could truly matter in the grand, indifferent sweep of the universe. Let that memory linger for a second, not as a source of anxiety, but as a reminder of your capacity to wrestle with life's deepest uncertainties. Now, consider this. The burden of choice, while heavy, is also a strange kind of gift. In the act of choosing, even imperfectly, we break the spell of paralysis. Imagine yourself at that crossroads once more, but this time, you take a tentative step forward, toward the forest, the meadow, or even the cliff. The mist doesn't clear, and the path doesn't suddenly reveal its destination, but with that first step, something shifts within you. The weight lightens, not because the questions disappear, but because you've chosen to engage with them. Action, in its quiet, unassuming way, becomes a rebellion against the void. It's not about finding the right path, perhaps there is no such thing, but about affirming that you are here, alive, and willing to carve your own meaning from the raw material of uncertainty. This dance between choice and doubt is at the heart of what it means to be human. We are not handed a map of existence, nor are we born with a predefined purpose etched into our souls. Instead, we are given the raw, untamed freedom to decide, over and over again, who we will be. And in those moments of crisis, when every choice feels like a leap into the dark, we are reminded of both our fragility and our strength. So, the next time you find yourself at a crossroads, weighed down by the endless possibilities before you, remember this: to choose is not to solve the mystery of life, but to participate in it. And perhaps that participation, however small, however uncertain, is enough to keep the journey alive. Imagine a world where every gesture, every ritual carries the weight of unspoken questions. A world where the way we pour tea or raise our voices in protest reveals not just who we are, but how we grapple with the vast, unanswerable mysteries of existence. Let us step into two contrasting scenes, two cultural landscapes, where the human spirit wrestles with the same eternal doubt in vastly different ways. One is a quiet room in ancient Kyoto, the other a chaotic street in a modern Western city. Both are battlegrounds for meaning, though their weapons could not be more different. Picture yourself in that Kyoto room, the air thick with the scent of matcha and the faint rustle of a silk kimono. A tea ceremony unfolds with deliberate slowness, each movement precise, almost sacred. The host kneels, her hands steady as she scoops the vibrant green powder into a ceramic bowl, the bamboo whisk moving in rhythmic circles, creating a froth that seems to hold the silence of centuries. There is no rush here, no demand for answers. The act itself is the answer, or perhaps the refusal to ask. In the Eastern traditions, particularly those rooted in Zen and Taoism, there is often a quiet acceptance of life's impermanence, a stoic embrace of suffering as part of the natural order. The tea is poured, the bowl offered with a bow, and in that gesture lies a profound acknowledgement. Life is fleeting, pain is inevitable, and yet there is beauty in this very moment of fragility. The question of why seems to dissolve into the steam rising from the cup. It is not that the question doesn't exist, It is that it is allowed to exist without resolution, a shadow that does not need to be chased away. Take a moment to reflect on this. What would it mean to sit with your own uncertainties as if they were honored guests, to let them be without demanding they speak? Now, let us shift to a different scene, thousands of miles and centuries away. The air is no longer still but charged with the clamor of a western city street. A protest march surges forward, hundreds of voices rising in unison, banners fluttering like the wings of some great restless bird. Faces are painted with determination, hands clutch megaphones, and every shout is a demand, not just for change, but for meaning. Here, in the heart of a culture shaped by individualism and the Enlightenment's relentless quest for truth, the human spirit does not bow to mystery. It challenges it. The question of purpose is not a quiet companion, but a battlefield. Each person in this crowd seems to carry a personal manifesto, a unique vision of what life should mean, what justice should look like, what their existence must achieve. There is no acceptance of suffering as inevitable. Instead, there is a fierce drive to reshape the world, to carve out a purpose through action and defiance. The energy is electric, almost desperate, as if meaning itself could be seized by force, wrested from the indifferent hands of the universe. These two worlds, Kyoto's serene ritual and the Western street's fervent cry, stand as mirrors to the myriad ways we confront the void. In the East, there is often a surrender to the flow of existence, a recognition that some questions are too vast to answer, and that peace lies in letting them drift like leaves on a stream. In the West, there is a hunger, a restless need to define oneself against the backdrop of an uncaring cosmos, to build castles of purpose even if they stand on shifting sand. Yet beneath these differences, the same ache pulses. Whether we kneel in silence or march with fury, we are all asking, what does it mean to be here? Why does this fleeting life feel so heavy with significance, and yet so empty of certainty? Consider the tea bowl and the protest sign as symbols of the same longing. One seeks harmony with the unknown, the other demands a reckoning with it. Neither fully escapes the weight of existential doubt, but each offers a way to bear it, through stillness or through struggle. Which path resonates more deeply with you? Do you find solace in the quiet acceptance of mystery, or in the fiery pursuit of answers, even if they remain just out of reach? Take a moment to reflect on this. Imagine yourself in both scenes, feeling the weight of the tea bowl in your hands, then the heat of the crowd pressing around you. How do these different masks of culture shape the way you face your own questions? As we linger in this contrast, let us not rush to choose one over the other. Perhaps the truest insight lies not in the differences, but in the shared human impulse beneath them. Whether we pour tea with trembling reverence or shout into the wind, we are all reaching for something beyond ourselves, something that might explain why we feel so much, why we yearn so deeply, why we cannot help but ask, even when the silence answers back with more silence. In this shared reaching, there is a kind of quiet kinship, a reminder that across cultures and centuries, we are bound by the same fragile, persistent hope, that our existence, however brief, might hold a whisper of meaning. Imagine for a moment a room bathed in the faint glow of twilight, the kind of light that seems to hesitate at the edges of things, unsure whether to stay or slip away. You sit alone in this dimly lit space, the world beyond the window a distant murmur, as if it belongs to someone else's story. The air is heavy with stillness, and in this quiet a thought creeps in, unbidden, like a shadow stretching across the floor. Why does any of this matter? Why do you feel so far from everything, even from yourself? This is not just solitude, it's a deeper kind of isolation. The loneliness of thought, where the mind turns inward and finds no easy answers, only echoes of questions that refuse to be silenced. In these moments, it's as if an invisible wall rises between you and the world. The laughter of others, the hum of daily life, the comforting rhythms of routine, they all seem to belong to a different plane, a place where meaning is assumed rather than sought. But here, in this quiet room, you are stripped bare, left with nothing but the raw texture of your own doubts. It's a strange paradox, isn't it? The very act of thinking, of reaching for understanding, can pull you away from the warmth of connection. You wonder if anyone else has ever felt this way, if beneath the surface of every smile, every casual word, there lies a similar abyss of uncertainty. Yet, in the same breath, you feel utterly alone, as if your questions are yours and yours alone to bear. This isolation is not merely a product of physical solitude. It's something deeper, woven into the fabric of human consciousness. To question existence, to peel back the layers of what we've been told to believe, is to step into a space where few dare to linger. It's like walking through a vast, empty cathedral, the stained glass casting fractured light on the stone floor, each step echoing with a hollowness that mirrors your own. You can't help but wonder if this is the price of awareness, if to truly think is to risk standing apart, separated by an invisible chasm from those who accept the world as it appears. And yet, isn't there something achingly human about this very struggle? Isn't this loneliness a silent thread that ties us to every soul who has ever gazed into the unknown and felt the weight of their own smallness? Take a moment to reflect on this. Have you ever felt this kind of solitude, not just in body, but in mind? A moment when the world seemed to recede, leaving you with nothing but the vast expanse of your own thoughts. Perhaps it was late at night, the clock ticking softly as the rest of the house slept. Or perhaps it was in the midst of a crowd, surrounded by voices, yet feeling as if you were the only one truly awake. What did that loneliness whisper to you? Did it frighten you, or did it, in some strange way, feel like a companion? As you sit in this imagined room, the dim light fading into darkness, you begin to sense that this isolation, though heavy, is not without purpose. It is in these quiet, solitary spaces that we confront the raw edges of our being. The loneliness of thought strips away the distractions, the comforting illusions, and forces us to face the questions we might otherwise avoid. Why are we here? What does it mean to live a life that will one day end? These are not questions that can be answered in the bustle of daily life, nor in the fleeting comfort of another's presence. They demand solitude, a kind of sacred aloneness, where the mind can wrestle with the infinite without fear of judgment or interruption. And yet, there is a bittersweet beauty in this, for as isolating as these moments can be, they also remind us of our shared fragility. Every human who has ever lived has, at some point, felt the tremor of doubt, the pang of existential loneliness. Though you may sit alone in this room, the weight of your thoughts is not yours alone to carry. It is a burden borne by countless others across time, from the philosopher pacing the ancient streets of a forgotten city to the poet scribbling verses by candlelight. This loneliness, though it separates, also connects. It is a silent acknowledgement that to be human is to question, to wonder, to feel the ache of the unknown deep in our bones. So, as the last sliver of twilight vanishes from the window, leaving the room in quiet shadow, let yourself linger in this solitude a little longer. Let the questions breathe. Let the loneliness of thought be not a prison, but a space of possibility, a place where, in the stillness, you might hear the faint whisper of something greater, something that binds your quiet doubts to the vast, unspoken longing of the world. What if the questions we ask, the ones that keep us awake in the still hours of the night, are not burdens to be shed, but brushes in the hands of an artist? Imagine a painter standing before a blank canvas, the air thick with the scent of turpentine, a single dim lamp casting long shadows across the room. Each stroke of the brush is not an answer, but a reaching, a tentative, trembling attempt to capture something that cannot be fully grasped. The canvas remains unfinished, always incomplete, yet in its imperfection, there is a raw, aching beauty. This is the art of questioning, the quiet rebellion of the soul against the silence of the universe. A rebellion that does not seek to conquer, but to create. Consider for a moment the weight of the unanswerable. Why are we here? What lies beyond the horizon of our understanding? These are not mere puzzles to be solved with logic or reason, but whispers from the depths of our being, urging us to look closer, to feel more deeply. They are the sparks that ignite the creative flame, turning anguish into expression. Think of the poet, hunched over a scrap of paper in the flickering light of a candle, wrestling with words to describe the indescribable, the longing for meaning in a world that offers no guarantees. Or the musician, fingers trembling on the strings of a guitar, pouring the ache of existence into a melody that speaks when words fail. These acts of creation are not escapes from the void, but bridges into it, fragile yet defiant. There is a strange alchemy in this process, a transformation that occurs when we allow our doubts to shape us rather than shatter us. History is filled with souls who turned their existential unrest into something eternal. Picture Frida Kahlo, her body racked with pain, her heart heavy with loss, yet her paintings bleed with vibrant defiance, each color a question, each form a meditation on suffering and identity. Or imagine Vincent van Gogh, gazing at a starry night not with clarity, but with a feverish wonder, his brushstrokes swirling like the chaos of his own mind, seeking not answers, but connection with the infinite. Their crises were not endpoints, but beginnings, portals through which they stepped into a dialogue with the mystery of life itself. And what of us, in our quieter, less celebrated moments? We may not paint masterpieces or compose symphonies, but do we not also create when we sit with our questions? When we lie awake, tracing the outlines of our uncertainties, are we not sketching the contours of our own inner landscapes? There is an art in this act of questioning, a subtle craft in allowing ourselves to feel the weight of the unknown without rushing to fill it with hollow certainties. It is the art of sitting with a blank page, not forcing words, but letting them emerge in their own time, messy and imperfect, yet undeniably ours. Take a moment to reflect on this. When was the last time a question stirred something within you, not as a problem to solve, but as a space to explore? Perhaps it was a quiet evening, the world outside hushed, and a sudden thought pierced through the mundane. Why does any of this matter? Did you push it away, or did you let it linger, like a guest who arrives unannounced but carries a hidden gift? In that moment, you were an artist, whether you knew it or not, shaping the raw material of doubt into something uniquely human. This is the beauty of the unanswerable. It does not demand resolution, but invites creation. It asks us to pick up the brush, to strum the chord, to write the line, not because we will ever capture the whole truth, but because in the act of reaching for it, we touch something profound. The painter before the canvas does not stop because the image will never be complete. They paint because the act itself is a kind of answer, a fleeting harmony between the self and the vast, unknowable beyond. So too with our questions. They are not chains, but canvases, endless, waiting for us to leave our mark, however small, however trembling. And perhaps in the end, it is not the answers we seek, but the questions themselves that define us. They are the colors we choose, the notes we play, the shapes we carve from the formless. They remind us that to be human is to wonder, to reach, to create, even when the canvas remains forever unfinished. Let that thought settle over you like a soft shadow, a quiet companion in the stillness. What will you paint with your questions tonight? Imagine for a moment a quiet laboratory at the edge of midnight. A lone scientist hunched over a telescope, their breath fogging the cold glass as they peer into the infinite expanse of the cosmos. Or perhaps they are bent over a microscope, gazing at the intricate dance of cells, a hidden world unfolding in a single drop of water. In these moments of discovery, there is a flicker of awe, a fleeting sense of triumph as patterns emerge from chaos. But then, almost inevitably, a shadow creeps in, a whisper of something deeper, something unanswered. What does it all mean? Why does any of this exist at all? Tonight, let us wander into this intersection of science and mystery, where the quest for knowledge brushes against the unanswerable, and where the search for meaning takes on a different hue under the cold light of empirical truth. Science, at its heart, is a relentless pursuit of the how. It unravels the mechanisms of the universe with a precision that can feel almost surgical, mapping the orbits of distant planets, decoding the language of DNA, measuring the echoes of the Big Bang that birthed time itself. It offers us a scaffolding of facts, a lattice of understanding that can feel, at times, like a sturdy bridge over the abyss of uncertainty. Picture the scientist in that quiet lab, their notebook filled with data, their mind alight with equations. Each discovery is a brick laid in the edifice of human knowledge, each experiment a step closer to grasping the machinery of reality. And yet, as the night deepens and the lab grows still, a question lingers in the air, one that no formula can solve, no instrument can measure. Why is there something rather than nothing? Why does the universe bother to exist at all? This is where science, for all its brilliance, begins to falter, not through any fault of its own, but because its tools are forged for a different purpose. It can describe the intricate dance of particles that form a star, trace the chemical reactions that spark a thought in your mind, but it stumbles when asked to address the why that haunts us in our quietest hours. Imagine standing beneath a night sky. The stars a glittering testament to billions of years of cosmic evolution, each one a furnace of physics and chemistry. Science tells us how they burn, how their light travels across unimaginable distances to reach our eyes. But as you stand there, feeling the weight of that vastness, does the how satisfy the deeper ache within? Or does it only sharpen the mystery, leaving you to wonder if there is a purpose woven into the fabric of reality, or if we are simply gazing at a beautiful, indifferent machine? Take a moment to reflect on this. Have you ever felt that strange dissonance, where knowing more about the world somehow makes it feel less knowable? Perhaps in a classroom, learning about the origins of life, or late at night scrolling through articles about the universe's expansion, only to find yourself more adrift than before. The paradox of science is that its answers often birth new questions, ones that slip beyond the reach of data and into the realm of philosophy, of poetry, of silent wonder. A scientist might chart the neural pathways of emotion, but can they explain why a sunset moves us to tears? They might predict the heat death of the universe, but can they tell us if our fleeting lives hold any weight against that inevitable end? These are the crevices where meaning hides, where even the sharpest minds must pause and confront the limits of their craft. And so, we find ourselves in a peculiar dance with science, a partnership of awe and frustration. It illuminates the world in ways that are nothing short of miraculous, yet it cannot light the path to ultimate purpose. Picture again that scientist in their lab, the hum of machinery, a quiet companion to their thoughts. As dawn approaches, they step outside, the first light of morning casting long shadows across the ground. They have spent hours quantifying the building blocks of existence, yet in this moment, they are just another human being, staring at the sky, feeling the same ancient questions stir within. Is there a point to all this discovery if it cannot answer the heart's deepest cry? Or is the act of seeking itself a kind of meaning, a defiance against the silence of the universe? Let this thought linger as the world turns quietly around you. Science, with all its power, is a map of the terrain, not a compass for the soul. It shows us where we are, how we came to be, but it leaves the why as an open wound, a mystery that perhaps was never meant to be solved. And in that space, between the known and the unknowable, we stand, curious, restless, and ever searching, under the same stars that have watched over every question humanity has ever dared to ask. Imagine standing on the edge of a dark, endless lake at midnight. The water before you, a mirror of the unknown, its surface still and unreadable. A faint mist clings to the air, carrying a chill that seeps into your bones. And as you peer into the depths, you see nothing, not even your own reflection. There's no way to know how deep it is, no way to see the other side, yet something within you urges you to step forward, to dive in, to surrender to the uncertainty. What compels us to take such a leap, to embrace the void when every instinct screams for solid ground? Is it madness, or is it something deeper, something truer? This is the essence of what the philosopher Søren Kierkegaard called the leap of faith, a moment of profound decision where we cast aside the safety of reason and step into the abyss of the unknown. Not necessarily a faith in a divine being, though it can be, but a faith in something beyond what we can grasp, beyond what can be proven or explained. It's a personal surrender, a choice to trust in spite of the darkness, to find meaning in spite of the silence. Picture yourself there by that lake, the world hushed around you, the weight of your doubts pressing against your chest. You know that to turn back is to remain in the familiar, the comfortable, yet also the incomplete. To leap is to risk everything. Your certainty, your control, perhaps even your sense of self. And yet, there's a quiet pull, isn't there? A whisper that says this risk, this plunge, might be the only way to truly live. Kierkegaard spoke of this leap as a response to the despair of existence, to the paralyzing dread that comes when we realize life offers no guarantees, no preordained purpose. He saw despair not as a failure, but as a necessary passage, a shadow we must cross through to reach something greater. Imagine the countless souls before you who have stood at their own dark lakes, their own moments of reckoning. A medieval monk, trembling in his cell, torn between doubt and devotion, choosing to pray even as his mind questions. A weary traveler in a desert, with no map or destination, deciding to walk on through the endless sands, trusting that something lies beyond. This leap isn't about erasing doubt. It's about moving forward with it, carrying it like a lantern into the night. But let's linger on this edge a moment longer. Is this leap of faith an escape from the existential dread that haunts us? A way to numb the ache of uncertainty by clinging to belief? Or is it, in its own way, the most courageous confrontation of all? A refusal to be paralyzed by the void, a defiance of the silence. When you stand at the brink, toes curling over the uneven ground, heart racing with the unknown, are you fleeing, or are you facing the truth head-on? Take a moment to reflect on this. What would it mean for you to leap, to trust in something you cannot see, whether it's a higher power, a personal conviction, or simply the mystery of life itself? Consider the paradox at the heart of this act. Faith, in Kierkegaard's view, is not a comfortable blanket to wrap around ourselves. It's a trembling, a tension, a constant state of becoming. It's not the certainty of arrival, but the willingness to journey without a map. Think of a tightrope walker, stepping out over a chasm, each step a gamble, each breath a prayer. There's no net below, no promise of safety, yet they move forward, not because they know they'll reach the other side, but because the act of walking itself becomes their meaning. Isn't there something hauntingly beautiful in that? Something that stirs within us, even as it unsettles. This leap, whether it's into faith, into love, into a new way of seeing the world, asks us to redefine what courage means. It's not the absence of fear, but the decision to act in spite of it. It's not the silencing of questions, but the choice to live with them, to let them shape us rather than shatter us. As you stand by that dark lake in your mind's eye, the water still and unyielding, feel the weight of this choice. The mist curls around you, the silence deepens, and somewhere within, a quiet voice asks, will you dive in? Will you trust the unknown, not because it promises answers, but because it promises life, raw, uncharted, and real? Take a moment to sit with this image, to feel the cool air against your skin, the uncertainty like a pulse in your veins. What lies beneath the surface of your own dark lake? What leap are you being called to make even now, in the stillness of this moment? Let the question linger, not as a burden, but as an invitation, a gentle nudge toward the edge where the unknown waits, not to consume you, but to transform you. Imagine for a moment the quiet clink of a dish against the sink, the warm water slipping over your hands, the faint scent of soap lingering in the air. It's an ordinary evening, one of countless others, where the rhythm of washing dishes becomes a kind of unspoken ritual. But then, without warning, a strange thought creeps in. Why am I doing this? Not just the dishes, but any of it. The weight of the sponge feels heavier. The repetition of scrubbing feels like a metaphor for something larger, something you can't quite name. In this mundane act, the familiar suddenly turns unfamiliar, as if you've stumbled into a hidden layer of existence, one that whispers of absurdity and meaninglessness. This is the everyday absurd, a quiet intrusion of existential questions into the most ordinary corners of life. It's not the dramatic crisis of standing on a cliff's edge or gazing into the infinite night sky. It's subtler, almost invisible, yet no less profound. It hides in the monotony of routine, in the way a coffee cup sits on the table, untouched, as if mocking the purpose of its own existence. It's in the way you fold laundry, each crease a reminder that time is passing, that these small acts might be all there is. And yet, isn't there something oddly meditative in this realization? The repetitive motion of your hands, the sound of water trickling down the drain, it becomes a kind of silent contemplation, a space where the mind wanders into territories it usually avoids. Think about how often we fill our days with these tasks, these small anchors that tether us to the illusion of order. We wash, we clean, we organize, as if by perfecting the surface of life, we can avoid the deeper currents beneath. But the absurd has a way of seeping through the cracks. It's in the moment you pause, sponge in hand, and wonder if any of this matters in the grand sweep of time. Will the dishes be remembered? Will the hours spent scrubbing away stains leave any trace in the vast, indifferent universe? These questions don't arrive with thunder or fanfare. They slip in quietly, like a shadow lengthening across the floor as evening falls. Take a moment to reflect on this. Have you ever felt that sudden shift, where the ordinary becomes strange, where a simple task opens a door to the infinite? Perhaps it wasn't dishes. Maybe it was sweeping the floor, or walking the same path to work, or staring at the flicker of a television screen. These moments, so small they could be overlooked, are portals to the larger mystery of being. They remind us that even in the humdrum, the profound is never far away. The absurd isn't just a philosophical concept to be debated in books or lectures. It's a lived experience, woven into the fabric of our daily grind. And yet, there's a curious beauty in this. When the absurdity of washing dishes, or any mundane act, strikes, it forces us to confront a deeper truth. That meaning isn't handed to us, pre-packaged and ready to consume. It's something we must carve out for ourselves, even in the smallest of actions. Perhaps there's a quiet rebellion in continuing to wash the dish, not because it matters in some cosmic sense, but because it matters to you in this fleeting moment. Or perhaps the act itself becomes a kind of meditation, a way to still the mind against the backdrop of unanswerable questions. The water flows, the plate gleams, and for a brief second, you are fully present, not solving the riddle of existence, but simply existing within it. This everyday absurdity doesn't demand answers. It invites awareness. It's a reminder that life's deepest inquiries don't always come in grand, cinematic revelations. Sometimes they arrive in the clatter of cutlery, in the rhythm of a task done 1,000 times before. They ask us to pause, to look closer, to wonder if meaning lies not in the act itself, but in the way we choose to meet it. So the next time you stand at the sink, hands submerged in soapy water, listen for that whisper of the absurd. It might just be the universe, speaking softly, asking you to see the ordinary with new eyes. Imagine for a moment the quiet hum of a city at midnight, the world softened by shadow and stillness. You're walking down a near-empty street, the faint glow of a street lamp casting long, wavering lines across the pavement. Ahead, a stranger sits on a bench, their face half hidden in the dim light. And as you pass, a fleeting glance turns into a nod, a silent acknowledgement of shared solitude. You stop, drawn by some unspoken pull, and before you know it, words spill out, hesitant at first, then raw and unguarded. Under the pale amber glow, you both confess the weight of your uncertainties, the quiet doubts that gnaw at the edges of your mind when the world falls silent. In this fleeting encounter, there's a strange comfort, a realization that even in our deepest isolation, we are not entirely alone. This moment, fragile and fleeting, reveals something profound about the human condition. We often carry our existential struggles in silence, convinced that no one else could possibly understand the vast, unanswerable questions that haunt us. Why are we here? What does any of it mean? These are not just personal burdens. They are threads woven into the fabric of our shared existence, binding us in ways we rarely acknowledge. That late-night conversation under the street lamp becomes a mirror, reflecting not just your own doubts, but the universal ache for connection in the face of life's mysteries. It's as if, for a brief instant, the walls we build around our innermost thoughts crumble, and we see ourselves in another's uncertainty. Think back to a time when you felt utterly adrift, when the ground beneath your beliefs seemed to shift and crack. Perhaps it was a moment of loss, or simply a quiet night when the weight of existence pressed too heavily to ignore. In such times, we often retreat inward, wrestling with our doubts in solitude. But what if, instead, we dared to voice them? What if we sought out another soul, not for answers, but for the simple solace of being heard? History whispers of such moments. Think of the ancient Greek agora, where philosophers and common folk alike gathered to debate life's meaning, or the quiet tea houses of old Kyoto, where unspoken questions hung in the air like mist. Even then, it was in the act of sharing doubt that people found a kind of strength, a reminder that to question is to be human. There's a peculiar beauty in this community of doubt, a fragile bridge built not on certainty, but on vulnerability. When you spoke with that stranger, it wasn't about solving the riddle of existence. It was about the raw honesty of admitting you don't know and hearing them echo the same. In that shared confession, the weight of your questions didn't vanish, but it shifted, becoming something lighter, something bearable. It's a paradox, isn't it? That in revealing our deepest uncertainties, we often find the most profound connection. We are not bound by shared answers, but by the shared struggle to ask at all. Take a moment to reflect on this. Have you ever felt that fleeting bond with another, born not of agreement, but of mutual wonder? Perhaps it was a friend, a family member, or even a stranger, someone with whom you let down your guard just long enough to admit the vastness of what you cannot grasp. How did it feel to stand in that space of shared doubt, to know that even in your isolation, you were not alone? This connection, however brief, reminds us of something essential. Our existential struggles, while intensely personal, are also universal. They are the quiet currents that run beneath every human life, surfacing in different forms but always carrying the same undercurrent of longing for meaning, for understanding, for companionship on this uncertain journey. That night, under the street lamp, as your words mingled with those of a stranger, you were part of an ancient ritual, one that stretches back through time to every soul who ever looked up at the stars and wondered why. It's a ritual of vulnerability, of daring to expose the cracks in our certainty, and in doing so, finding a flicker of warmth in the cold expanse of the unknown. And so, as the city hummed softly around you, as the street lamp's glow began to feel like a small, defiant stand against the darkness, you realized something. These moments of connection, born from doubt, are not solutions to life's great mysteries. They are instead fragile reminders that the search itself is shared. We may never find the answers we seek, but in confessing our uncertainties to another, we weave invisible threads of understanding, threads that hold us together even when the night feels endless. As you parted ways with that stranger, their silhouette fading into the shadows, a quiet thought lingered. Perhaps it is not the answers that sustain us, but the courage to keep asking together. Imagine for a moment the vastness of the ocean, its surface shimmering under a pale moon, endless and untamed. Each wave rises and falls, a fleeting force of nature, crashing against the shore only to retreat and be reborn in the next swell. Now think of your own mind as that shore, shaped and reshaped by the relentless tides of thought, by waves of doubt and wonder that seem to come without warning, without end. What if these waves, these moments of profound uncertainty we call existential crises, are not mere disruptions, but part of a deeper rhythm, an eternal cycle that carves the very contours of who we are? Consider how these crises, these periods of questioning and unease, do not strike just once in a lifetime. They return, don't they? Like the tides, they ebb for a while, leaving us with a fragile sense of clarity, only to surge again when we least expect it. Perhaps it's in the quiet of a sleepless night, when the world is still, and a single thought, "Why does any of this matter?" begins to ripple through your consciousness. Or maybe it's in the aftermath of a great change, a loss or a triumph, when the ground beneath your feet feels unsteady once more, and the old questions rise anew, as if they had never truly left. Each time the wave feels different, shaped by the person you've become, yet its essence remains the same. A confrontation with the unknown, a reminder that certainty is a fleeting illusion. Picture yourself standing on that shoreline now, barefoot, on the cool, damp sand, watching the ocean's ceaseless dance. Each wave that crashes brings with it a new doubt, a new fracture in the story you've told yourself about life. One wave might carry the weight of mortality, whispering reminders of how little time you have to find your place in the grand scheme. Another might bear the burden of purpose, challenging you to define meaning in a world that offers no clear answers. And yet, as each wave recedes, it leaves behind something new, a subtle shift in perspective, a smoothing of rough edges, or even a deeper crack that reveals a hidden strength. Could it be that these crises, though painful in their arrival, are not burdens to be cast off, but forces that sculpt us over time? Take a moment to reflect on this. When was the last time a wave of doubt crashed against your own shore? Did it leave you shattered, or did it carve out a new space within you? A place where you could stand a little taller, see a little further. We often fear these moments of crisis, labeling them as breakdowns, as failures of resolve. But what if they are something else entirely? What if they are invitations to grow, to shed old skins and step into a version of ourselves we could not have imagined before the tide came in? The ocean does not apologize for its power, nor does it pause to ask if the shore is ready for change. It simply moves, as it always has, reshaping everything in its path. Now, let us linger on this thought a little longer. If existential crises are indeed cycles, recurring waves in the vast sea of consciousness, then perhaps our task is not to escape them, but to learn their rhythm. To stand on that shoreline, not with fear, but with a quiet curiosity, watching each wave approach, knowing it will alter us in ways we cannot predict. There is a strange beauty in this, isn't there? A kind of surrender to the forces beyond our control, an acceptance that to be human is to be reshaped again and again by the tides of doubt. These crises, after all, are not the end of us. They are the making of us, each one a brushstroke in the ever unfinished portrait of our being. And so, as you stand there, gazing out at the endless expanse of water, consider this final whisper of the tide. What if the very act of questioning, of feeling the ground shift beneath you, is not a sign of weakness, but of life itself? What if these waves are the heartbeat of existence, pulsing through us to remind us that we are still here, still searching, still becoming? Let that thought settle over you like the mist of the sea, cool and fleeting, as you watch the next wave rise on the horizon, unsure of what it will bring, but ready perhaps to meet it all the same. Imagine for a moment that the storm within has finally passed. The raging winds of doubt, the torrents of questions that once threatened to drown you, have stilled. You find yourself walking through a vast field just as the first light of sunrise spills over the horizon, painting the world in hues of gold and amber. The air is cool, carrying the faint scent of dew-kissed grass. And there's a quietness here, a profound stillness that seems to wrap itself around you like a soft, invisible cloak. In this moment, the weight of existence doesn't press down as it once did. Instead, it feels almost like a companion, a silent presence that walks beside you, no longer demanding answers. This is the quiet after the storm, a space where the chaos of wondering why you are here, what it all means, or if it means anything at all, begins to settle into something softer, something less urgent. It's not that the questions have disappeared. They linger still, like faint echoes in the distance. But now, they don't claw at your mind with the same ferocity. You've come to see them as part of the landscape of being human, as inevitable as the changing seasons or the rise and fall of the sun. And in this field, under this tender dawn, you begin to wonder if perhaps the mystery itself is not a burden to bear, but a gift to hold. Think back to the times when the unknown felt like an enemy, a vast, uncharted void that threatened to swallow you whole. Every unanswered thought, every unresolvable doubt seemed to build a wall between you and the world. But here, in this moment of calm, you might notice something different. The void is still there, yes, but it no longer feels like a threat. It's more like an open sky. Endless, yes, but also full of possibility. What if the absence of certainty isn't a flaw in the fabric of existence, but the very thing that makes life a journey worth taking? What if the mystery is what invites us to keep walking, to keep searching, not for a final destination, but for the beauty of the path itself? Take a moment to reflect on this. Let the cool air of this imagined morning brush against your thoughts. Feel the earth beneath your feet, steady even when your mind is not. Consider how many others, across time and space, have walked through their own fields after their own storms, gazing at their own sunrises, feeling this same quiet. Perhaps there is a kind of unspoken kinship in this shared uncertainty, a thread that ties us to every soul who has ever looked up at the sky and whispered, "I don't know." As you continue through the field, notice how the light grows stronger, illuminating blades of grass that shimmer with tiny drops of dew, each one a fleeting mirror of the world. There's a simplicity here, a reminder that life, for all its vast and unknowable depths, also unfolds in these small, tangible moments. The warmth of the rising sun on your skin, the sound of your own breath, the rhythm of your steps. They are enough, at least for now. And perhaps that's the quiet lesson of this aftermath. Not to solve the mystery of existence, but to live within it. To let the questions be, not as problems to conquer, but as companions on the road. There's a peace in this acceptance, isn't there? A gentle surrender to the idea that some things may never be fully understood, and yet, life can still be rich, still be meaningful in its own quiet way. The field stretches on before you, endless in its own right, and as you walk, you feel the last remnants of the storm dissolve into the morning mist. You are not required to have all the answers. You are not required to pin down the meaning of it all. You are simply asked to keep moving forward, to let the mystery unfold around you, to breathe in the stillness of this new day. So, linger here a little longer in this golden light. Let the weight of uncertainty transform into something lighter, something that doesn't pull you down, but instead lifts you, like the first rays of dawn lifting the darkness. Embrace the not knowing, not as a void to fear, but as a space to explore. For in this quiet after the storm, you might just find that the journey itself, unanswered, unfinished, and utterly mysterious, is more than enough.